All right, it's time to talk about all the fun and exciting things going down this week in Reddit, and I think the best place to start, Case, is with a recap of the Texans game. You may have heard, we played preseason game 2. We saw a full quarter of Matthew Stafford throwing to Marvin Jones and Danny Amendola. Galladay went in for 46 touchdowns. It was a good show by the team, wasn't it?
Chris, I think you watched the wrong game.
I might have. Rumor is that Matthew didn't play, huh?
No, we saw some things. Okay, first of all, this might have been pegged for later in the show, but people kind of freaking out every year. So, I mean, people like to freak out.
You had a great comment in the Slack chat about this time of year, how there's football and it's exciting and so much fun, but how people react to the preseason game. Can you articulate that again? Do you remember what you said?
Well, it just kind of like, as I've mentioned several times on the show, and I say all the time everywhere, there are many ways in which I like the off season more than the regular season. That tends to come to a screeching halt this time of year, just because people freaking out about stuff drives me crazy, and it shouldn't. I should just, I should be accustomed to it by now. But this whole thing about, okay, so Stafford hasn't been playing, but he hasn't been practicing, and while they have held him out of some practices, it was scheduled, and even when they held him out of practices, he was doing things like running up and down the infamous hill. So there's no reason, and if you look around at both the way this team has been in terms of not rushing important players back and being cautious in general, as well as around the NFL, where more and more and more, also, as I've mentioned on this show several times, I've been listening to a lot of Fox Sports Radio in the car lately, and while I try not to glean too many of my opinions off of things that are said there,
lift most of the time.
largely nonsense, but there has been a lot made about teams not playing their starters in the preseason, and the preseason becoming less and less important as far as teams wanting to make a big deal out of implementing their offense or defense or whatever. And there's probably quite a few reasons for that.
Yeah, the CBA is probably rattled in there, right? I mean, there's probably some posturing going on around the upcoming deal with that. But yeah, no, guys aren't playing in the preseason like they used to, and it started this year, and it's a big shift. And you look at like what happened to Jerome Kearse, and you say, well, yeah, now I understand why we don't have a whole lot of guys out there playing. So what does that leave you? Well, that leaves you with seeing a lot of guys that maybe aren't your first strings. That leaves you with a lot of impressions that if you try to use those to paint them across your team as to how good your team is, you may look like an idiot. So don't take what you see too much. And this is something, look, I have to talk about my 463 years of experience as a Lions fan, right? I don't know. It's not, there's this stupid phrase from the radio that people use called being lionized. It's not that, but you can't just live and die by a preseason game, particularly as a Lions fan. But I mean, you just can't do that. It's not something to get worried about. It's not something to light the house on fire about. It's not something to start staking claims of I predicted the team. First off, I'm going to say your prediction's bullshit, right? You don't know what you're fucking talking about. No, you don't. You cannot predict. Nobody predicts how a team is going to do with any kind of accuracy. It's majority luck. And yeah, you use a lot of data to move those things, but you don't know who's getting hurt. You don't know what's happened in the season. There's all kinds of unknown. So don't tell me what you predicted and you were right and someone else was wrong, because that's just so dumb, especially at this point, based on the set of data you have. It's pure fucking roll of the dice. So stop with that. But let's talk about what we did see on the field, all right? Because there's a couple of guys here that we had completely written off that came out looking pretty strong out of that game, right? And we know it's backups against backups, but you still want to see them play well. You want to see things develop, and we'll talk about player development a little bit here. But the first guy I want to talk about is David Fales. Do we have a first ballot Hall of Famer on our hands here?
No, but it certainly does. Okay, so to be fair to Josh Johnson, He had how many days that he was on the team? Only a few days.
We'll talk about him, but yeah,
we'll get there. But David Fales certainly created a situation where there is now a chance,
a quarterback controversy for the third string quarterback. Unless if Savage makes his way back. Well, we hope so. But.
Right. And we're still looking at a situation where we're not expecting either of those guys to make the roster long term. They may be on the roster week 1. They may be on the roster for a few weeks. It depends on how long Tom Savage is. But I think, it was pretty clear that Tom Savage is the backup as soon as he's able to come back from concussion protocol, and we truly have no idea. As we said last week, it could be tomorrow, it could be 6 months, but it's probably more like a month to or so, type of thing.
Yep, I think game 2 is where David Fales showed us what the team, the front office saw in him and why he was there versus week 1 and all the training camp ahead of that. We did the whole he was named appropriately thing. But he made it an exciting game at the end. And that's one of the things I've noticed beyond just the Lions game this year. Preseason's been pretty fun to watch. And normally it's like, the Saints-Chargers game, it was 17-3 with the Chargers, came back 23-17 to get the Saints to win. Really exciting game, fun to watch the bottom of the roster guys there. It was really, really a fun game to watch. Saw a lot of that again, the same kind of thing with the Lions game. Preseason football has been a lot more fun than I remember it this year, and it's interesting with all the guys that are being sat to play these games.
Side note, that just reminded me, because I watched a video today that was posted on RNFL of like wacky and crazy plays from the preseason since like back to 2000. It was a lot of fun. If you want to watch something, it was like 14 minutes, and it was just a lot of fun. So if you want something that's meaningless but fun to watch, go find that.
Yeah. All right, so Fales out there looking good. Maybe not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but that story's yet to be written, Case.
Right,
you take that to the bank.
It's not over yet.
No, but he did show why they picked him up. So it was good to see out of him, and that kind of growth that you see. Hopefully that trajectory continues, because it's something that we're seeing that maybe we haven't before. Another guy I want to talk about, Reeves-Maybin. Holy cow, where did this guy come from? Him and we'll talk about Killebrew next, but both of those guys are two guys that we had written off. They don't fit in the Patricia system. They don't fit in this defense. It's just not going to be a thing. And next thing you know, they're having a couple of games in which they're killing it. I mean, and Killebrew has grown a lot from one to the next. But let's talk about Reeves-Maybin. Good growth we're seeing here. A guy that doesn't seem to fit in this defense. He seems to be carving out a niche, and he's finding a place. Based on his size profile not fitting. It's really something interesting.
And like I said last week, the big challenge now goes to Matt Patricia, and the big challenge is, can you find ways to use these guys who you wouldn't normally have used in the specific scheme you wanted to run? Can you find a way to maximize the output of talented players who are coming along well, and not just let them go to waste?
Yeah. That's
and not be the next, not be your version of Kyle Van Noy.
And this is the thing that we'll talk about. Let's just do it now. What we're seeing, right? We talked about this at the end of last year, how players had grown and changed through the season and were able to develop. And this is a long process, and it's something you watch over time. And you have to be able to acknowledge milestones along the way, whether it's working or not, or it just kind of happens and people forget about it. People that talk about Caldwell and his staff, the thing that we have always said where he failed is in the development of young players. Nobody ever
there was not much growth
to get better. Ever. They came in at their peak, and that's what they did, and then they got fit into a system and played at that level or worse, always. And that was one of the big knocks we had on him and his staff. And we're already seeing a whole different set of dots being collected here and connected that show these guys growing and improving within the system. I love what I saw from Reeves-Maybin and Killebrew, what we saw this last week. Nice play. Again, another guy that we had written off miles, right? And I talked about how he's a gorgeous man. And
those tweener, players, the linebacker safety combo things, they work some places, and we just didn't think they were going to work here. Yep. But if he's figured it out, if you can figure out how to make that work, and then the coaches can figure out how to use it, I mean, you've got real weapons in those type of players.
Yep,
so
absolutely. And in his interview, he was talking about buy-in and how buy-in this year is a lot different than it has been historically. And that's something that I thought was really good. So you see player development and you see this kind of growth, and then they start talking about not just veterans, but the young guys. Everybody has bought into the system and believes it. And there was a lot of talk about that in the media last year about how, well, we'll start with lost the locker room, right? Because they had to run, which was on its face stupid. But now we're seeing that kind of buy-in from players, or hearing about that kind of buy-in from the players, and what that means for this team going forward is only good things. Because if you guys believe in the system, and then they can run the system and trust each other to run the system, then it's an indictment of the system if something goes wrong versus the players. And I want to see that the system be the problem.
One of the players. One of the things that we've talked about a lot is instinct, and how we want players with instinct. We talked about it with Jared Davis coming out of the draft, and while he looked really good in that aspect, he's taken some time to grow into that in the NFL. But if you got players who have that, and you think of that as being one of the less coachable things, but maybe that's just because we're not used to seeing any growth in it. So maybe that's an us problem, not a them problem, and now it's not a them problem, and that we're seeing improved awareness. And that was one of the things that Matt Patricia said specifically about Miles Killebrew. Jeff Risdon put out a little short article on what Matt Patricia had to say about Killebrew, and basically that he liked where he'd seen improvement, especially in where he decided to take chances. And those are the kind of like intuitive things, like you get better, hopefully, at time at choosing when to make risk plays, because if you play every play safe, okay, but you're not always, but you're still, if you play every play safe, you're going to allow 3-4 yards and first downs and, that kind of thing. But and if you take big risks, every once in a while, you're going to get torched for a big thing, but also every once in a while, you're going to come away with an interception, or, a fumble, or a tackle for a loss, or a drive killer play. And you want, it's all about just, improving the percentage of those plays that where you take a risk, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And if that's what he's doing, and if that's where he's growing, awesome.
And it goes, we said it and you said it another way, but it deserves saying again. It's that development. The Kyle Van Noy comment you made is great, because he went over to New England and he was able to deliver way better in New England than he ever was here. And he had time to develop here and didn't. And he went there and immediately started working, and then very, very quickly evolved into a way to be able to contribute on the team. Said great things about Matt Patricia when they were practicing together.
And still in a limited role, which is fine.
Sure, but he has a fit, right? He had no fit here, and they were able to make that work. So, again, you want to talk about coaching staffs. This is one of the big, big improvements we've got now with Matt Patricia over what we had in the Caldwell era, is this ability to help players get better and play at their best, rather than whatever they come in at is their peak. So I appreciate that. People tell us how much he fixed Caldwell. We'll see what that means. That is, I think, out to the juries still. So we'll see. Let's talk about also another player who had a great game. Certainly got his name in lights for a while there. Will Harris, a pickup in the 3rd round, I believe. I'm working from my memory here. I got to go look. That's a dumb one. Yeah, Will Harris, 3rd rounder. I don't know why my brain froze on that, but picked him up. He Aquara knocked a ball loose, picked it up, took it in for his first fumble 6. That was really great to see. It was, of course, it was fun. It was exciting. It was great to see. But Will Harris has really stepped up and started to look pretty good out there. He's seems to be a guy, at least based on this game, worthy of that 3rd round pick. Would you agree?
Based on the game alone, absolutely. He has struggled at times in camp. He's struggled in coverage, but once again, like, when you put guys in camp and you put them in situations that are unfavorable to them, it's to push them to get better in those areas. It's not that they can't play a role. and be very good at that role. But you're not necessarily, because we certainly, both you and I and most of the beat writers, we didn't have a lot of great things to say about Will Harris through most of training camp. Yep. But a lot of that is how to his strengths once games start. That's the only thing that matters. If you hope that his weaknesses, his coverage gets better. But if you can use him to be a downfield, force of terror, that's a good thing to have too.
Yeah, I love a downfield force.
It would be great if every player was as versatile as Glover Quinn was at his peak. But
yes, sorry, he just warmed my cockles there for a moment.
I know, sorry.
All right, let's talk about a guy who's a little bit of a quandary. I want to say quandary, right?
What?
But it's not Diggs. A guy that just was rejected out of hand by Riz earlier in the offseason.
Me too.
Camp, right? Yeah.
Ugly. I've never seen so bad. I was so convinced that he'd be gone. I didn't even think he'd make it this far.
And then they turn the lights on. The guy shows up. What the heck? Who is this Brandon Powell guy? And how do you judge? How do you know? I mean, I think I know still.
I don't know.
But he looked in this game, even particularly, he looked pretty well. He did a pretty good job, but had a drop, didn't he?
Well, he had a fumble last week in week 1. I don't remember whether or not I should remember, but I don't remember whether or not we recovered it or not. But so I mean, it isn't perfect, but he's getting open. He's catching everything thrown at him right now. I think.
Yeah, mostly.
he had like 58 yards on 3 receptions, which is pretty solid. And just, I mean, look good.
Doesn't look like it's enough though.
It reminds me of Jace Billingsley because
I've heard of him.
He had some electric plays in the preseason, but never was able to really latch. Not reliable, but could flash the potential of a guy who is super reliable. I hope I hope Brandon Powell finds his way to consistency, and that everything that we saw during training camp and all that stuff, and like we just talked about, and I just said that guys get put in tough situations in training camp. But what Brandon Powell was having trouble with in training camp was more or less just catching the ball. So like you can't really blame that on the situation so much. But if he figures it out, if he can keep turning it on during games, I expect he'll get some play time again next week. Maybe he'll even get some play time with Stafford. But I have a hard time predicting him.
Stafford's going to play?
I'd put it at about 75%.
Interesting. Yeah, no.
But it won't blow my mind if he doesn't.
Right. I would have been, before game 2 of this preseason, I would have said 100% Stafford's going to play.
Mm-hmm.
But, and so now, of course, what do you need? You need a narrative when this kind of thing happens. So now the narrative is, oh, well, he's been inconsistent in practice. Without these reps, will he be okay? It's like, really? You think a couple reps in a preseason game is what's going to bring this guy up to speed for the season? I think that's a flawed premise. So anyway.
It's changed. It's different. And anytime something is different from what people have seen before, even if what they've seen before hasn't been very good, they're still going to react negatively to seeing the change. Like, right.
Yeah, so 100%. So let's see. We'll get into really quick here shortly what maybe who lost some juice on the field in this Texans game.
Sure.
Texans defense looked good early, so that did create pressure for the guys on the offensive line and quarterback. We'll talk about that.
Still much better than the week before, though.
Yeah.
2 sacks is much preferable to 8 or 9, whatever it was.
Yes, absolutely. But when we do that, we got to talk about something very quickly. Amazon.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. That's where you get the book. You get the playbook there every time.
That's where you get your sacks.
That's where you get all your sacks. Sack Salute. Head on over Amazon to DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Amazon.DetroitLionsPodcast.com for all your Amazon needs. You go straight to the website, puts a little cookie in there, lets them know that we sent you, and they give us a kickback. Doesn't cost you anything more. It's a great way to support the show by buying stuff you're going to buy anyway. I know I had to buy things to get ready for my trip here, and I did it. Everybody does it. Case does it. I do it. Everybody. Amazon.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Help the show out with a very simple URL that you use when you go to Amazon. And those kickbacks help us do all the great stuff we're doing. So thanks for everyone who's doing that. All right, let's move on. The guys whose stock didn't necessarily go up. Let's just start across the board with special teams. Special teams looked like ass out there. The return game was terrible. Coverage was terrible. It was terrible. I wish I had a drop from a coach going off on a rant. I say that, though. I'm not even ranting about it. They talked about it. They haven't even opened up the special teams playbook yet. They haven't really practiced a lot of this stuff. I have a feeling that this is just pretty simple workouts for these guys. It's just, playing against a live opponent in a very simplified way. And I don't think that they seem too concerned that they haven't opened up their special teams playbook and really laid into it yet. Case, I know you feel differently. I think you said the season's over after that performance this week. Do you still feel that way?
I'm just looking forward to next off season.
Oh man, yeah. Special teams look terrible, right? But nothing to worry about. Can we just leave it at that?
Not yet. I did make a comparison of Jamal Agnew, and this is not relevant to this last game so much, to Stephen Logan. If anybody remembers that name and is horrified at that name. Electric with the ball in his hands. But I've seen Jamal Agnew struggle to maintain possession on when he's receiving the kick on more than a few occasions. And I'm concerned. I certainly hope that this is not the case, but I'm concerned that could be an ongoing issue for him, and that we could see him try to put a lot of faith in him, and then for him to cost us some big situations by fumbling, not being able to handle a ball.
And that's definitely a concern and something they need to look for. It's one of these things, and I'll actually use this as a bridge to the next conversation. Senior Bowl was where we were at. We couldn't tell how good Travis Fulgham was, even though he was on the watch list, because the quarterbacks couldn't put the fucking ball within the man's wingspan. Anybody's wingspan. They're so bad, right? You look at
Calvin Johnson could have done it.
Well, yeah, possibly. But the situation was you couldn't evaluate these guys because they never had an opportunity or a good shot to catch the ball. And not as you could. I mean, there was balls that got in there, but it was just so inconsistent that it made it hard on them. It made it hard on us and the whole thing. That's a lot of what we saw with Agnew. Now, the dropping thing, that's something to watch out for. But what you're seeing with him doing running the ball back and the other guys that are doing it is with no fucking blocking, they don't get any seams to really run, and you can't really see what kind of talent they have. And that's the problem. So now you're just seeing guys get the ball, and it's all like it's absolutely the thing where people talk about, you just got to do the best you can in a shitty situation. We're going to put you in a tough situation, see how you perform. So don't take too much away from that in that regard. And now we talk about the same thing here with the wide receivers. Not a lot of really good things to say about them, particularly in the first half. But then again, they were playing with balls sent to him from Josh Johnson, and he'd only been around
once again,
4 days.
Just got here.
Yeah,
I don't like how hard people came down on him. I'm not saying he's great. But Jesus, like, dude just got here. Give him a second. Don't. No breaks. No rest for the wicked. It's not his fault that Tom Savage got hurt.
Okay? Right.
Not his fault.
And let's face it. I mean, it was a 7-point game, but you can't get super worried about it because the first half we just didn't have anybody on the damn field, right? I mean, it was You had a guy that had been there 4 years running the offense against a whole lot of second teamers, third teams. The ball wasn't where it needed to be. It wasn't, the plays were off, the timing was off, and a bunch of stuff. No, they didn't move the ball. Our second string right now quarterback, who may be third string when Tom gets out of the concussion protocol, didn't deliver the ball perfectly to second and third string guys after being here 4 days. The season's over. Burn it down. stupid take. Really, really dumb take.
It was much better. At least the fan reaction. I mean, the fan reaction is to the final score.
Yeah.
If the Lions had managed to win it, if David Fales had managed to put the Lions up, by 7 points or whatever, that the fan reaction overall would have been positive. Why were we complaining last week? Even though David Fales is throwing to these receivers who aren't even making the roster.
We're guaranteed Super Bowl if we win that
right,
game.
Exactly.
Put Stafford down. We got a quarterback controversy. David Fales landed it in a guy that isn't going to play in the NFL's arms for a touchdown and won the game.
So, overreaction to week one being a shit show. And I'm not saying it's not important to have guys doing a good job. I'm not. But overreaction to week two is less, but I think it's only less of an overreaction because we lost by less.
Yeah, there you go. It kept people pretty level, right? And let's face it, it was a fun game to watch. It was entertaining. It was totally good football for preseason. I'll take that anytime. That was good stuff. All right, now you may not like our takes. That's okay. You agree, you disagree. It's okay. We're just telling you things as we see it, and it's kind of. I will use a phrase from Caldwell: "Don't get too high and don't get too low." Right? Just it's just preseason. We're just going to look at what we got. We're going to go
master your high, baby.
Yeah, and we're gonna watch this team grow this year. This is going to be an interesting story. This is a important year for this team. I think this is an important year of growth for the Lions, and next year is the
very important year.
Yep, next year I think is the key year for this team to nail it, just to absolutely nail. There's no excuses for not having a playoff win or two next year. And I think without those, it blows up. I really agree.
I agree.
I think this is an important year and a step in that direction. Would love to see us win a playoff game this year or more. But let's just make it. That's kind of where my head's at right now. So don't worry too much. Now, with that being said, you don't like our takes. Maybe you think you could build a better team because you're the GM. Fantasy football is your game. And we're getting to the end of the chance to sign up. So hurry up. Get in there. It's fantasy.detroitlionspodcast.com. Sign up. A bunch of people have gotten invited into leagues already. Play against Case, play against me. No IDP, no individual defensive players, none of that stuff. This is all team defense, the standard kind of fantasy everyone loves and knows. It's individual leagues. You play against 12 players. There's no mix in leagues like there was before. It's straight. You win your league, you win a prize. And then we may throw some extra prizes actually out to the leagues for multiple leagues where we have multiple first place winners. We maybe take the total score and throw some extra prizes for a couple of you guys out there, just for being super champions, even though you didn't compete. All right. So check it out. Fantasy.detroitlionspodcast.com. We got 2 pick'em leagues, a big pool where as many people as one can join, $5 per spot. Pick 'em. Go crazy picking them. You can do as many.
You got to come after. I realize that my throne for this pick'em is not already there, but
it's not the Iron Throne
on this one, and it's no small task.
Yeah. So you got that. You're gonna play against Case. And they also got the small batch league of pick'ems where you have a limited pool, but also a smaller number of people you're playing against. Check it out. Fantasy.detroitlionspodcast.com. Go in there. Again, it's our annual fundraiser. So everyone that's joining up, thank you so much for helping support us and what we do. But this is the big area where we make money to pay for all the servers and everything else throughout the year. So please join up, help the show, and have a lot of fun. Like everything we try to do it in a way where you get something good out of it, right? We want to make sure that we provide a good value to you as a result. So that's like the Amazon and the fantasy football and all the different stuff, Fanatics, all those things we try to do. We try to do it in a way that you get some value as well, and you can still support your pals over here at the DLP. All right, moving on. We picked up a guy, Jordan Lasley, a 5th round draft pick last year by the Baltimore Ravens, I believe. Known for some interesting off-field issues. And as a result of picking him up, we released Justin Stockton, and there's a lot of talk about Dontrelle Lehman, and there hasn't been any news on him yet. He came through Detroit, wound up going to the Jets now is where he's going to visit and see what's going on there. Let's talk about this kind of in a broader sense. Number one, what are we looking for? We're looking for a replacement for Jerome Curse. I had Jeremy Curley in my head. Jerome. I'm sorry. I've got all kinds of mess up. So we're trying to replace Curse, and We're not looking for someone to replace Marvin. We're not looking for a Golden Tate replacement. We're looking for somebody down the roster. Now, if we could sign up Golden Tate as our number 4, anybody here would be happy, right? We would be ecstatic for that, but that's not what we're looking at. So Jordan Lasley, he got in a fight in training camp. We saw, which happens. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not writing it off as no big deal, but training camp, you see some scuffles.
Happened once already in Lions training camp. I don't even remember who it was, but whoever it was, Patricia kicked out right away. It was an offensive lineman.
Yep, that was against the Patriots when they were
Patriots.
Yep. So, and he's got control of that. He'll take care of it. I'll tell you something else that's interesting. This is something that I've thought of, and I was wondering when it might happen. You look at Josh Gordon over in Patriots land. You look at years past, Randy Moss. You look at Eric Blunt, right? Came there at a point. These guys were all character issue guys, right? Mm-hmm. And where were they? Well, they were on a roster full of guys that really didn't have character issues, right? But they would not be afraid to take a long shot on a bad boy or a guy with problems, right? Character problems. This may be dipping a toe into that lake for this team. It's a low risk move to be able to do that. It's a way to test your staff, your coaching staff, your trainers, everybody else to see if this guy misbehaves. How do we handle it? Can they handle it? And seeing how prepared they are to take a Josh Gordon type of guy with a character problem. Not that, and Martha doesn't want that. We talk about that. We understand that. But there's a point when guys are just good enough in the realm of football that you want to take them. And if they can take themselves to the next level, they can behave themselves and act like normal humans, it's an opportunity for you to pick up a really, really good player. So anyway, there's a sense here that this might be just like a little dip of the toe in there to test the leadership of this team.
I'm trying to think if there's a single player on the Lions roster other than Lasley now who has any off-field stuff.
No.
And I can't think of a single one. I mean, Golden Tate had a couple, things. As much as I love Golden Tate, and I think he was a very good leader for us, but
I think it was like this.
I fucking love the overtake.
There's a single one. Darius Slay is cocky. I think Kenny Galladay is low key cocky, but I just can't think of a single guy on the roster right now that has any issues like that. Which sets you up, as you said, and I completely agree, sets you up in a situation where if you want to bring, a guy in here and try to get them on the right track, I have no problem whatsoever with that. We've talked about it in the past. I believe in second chances. I believe in third chances. I believe in however many chances. If somebody shows a real work ethic, if somebody shows a real want to change and be better, I've been through that part of my life, so I get it.
You didn't apologize.
So So, I mean, I'm not suggesting that Lasley is going to even make the roster. He's a real long shot at this point. And we'll talk about Inman in a sec here, because I do think Inman would make the roster. But he's 6'1". He's got decent physical tools, but you have a hard time seeing him getting past a guy like Fulgham, who basically has a similar body type and style, and where they went out and actually drafted Fulgham and put a little bit of investment into him. This guy is more just like,
he is practice squad eligible though, right?
Yeah, totally.
Second year player, longer term investment,
definitely. And he didn't play any games last year,
right?
So
this may be a longer term investment, and even depth behind the depth of the guys, because it's going to be hard for a guy like him to step in and learn the playbook and outplay a guy like Travis Fulgham, like you said, right? But given time on the practice squad and somebody gets hurt, you can elevate him into the position. But let's talk about Dontrelle Lehman. Go ahead and tell us why he has a better shot to make the roster.
I mean, even though he's not on the roster. But you know me, I don't like, the speculation about every single guy who gets cut by every single team. But the second Dontrelle Inman got cut, it was like the lights go off. It was like, no brainer, bring this guy in. He played about 30% of his snaps out of the slot last year. So he gives you that flexibility, and it's odd to me how much faith it seems like the organization is putting in Danny Amendola to be like the only slot guy, unless Brandon Powell is much higher on their sheets than where I've got him. But this is like the only guy, 6'3", but also plays the slot. So he's got your big slot, like stuff that I loved when Anquan Bolden was here. Mm-hmm. Not that he's on the same level, but that he can provide you the big body inside. That we're likely to see most of. I mean, if I'm guessing, it's because they see that as a role of the tight ends in this offense, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I like our tight ends, but to add another guy with the versatility to move into that role, as well as the versatility to be, a backup to either outside receiver. It's not like the dude's been super productive over his career. He had 1 year of 800 yards, I think, with the Broncos, a couple of years of 300 yards, So it's like you're not looking at an all-star by any means, but I would probably, whether I'd rather have Dontrelle Inman or Jermaine Kearse is a toss-up. I don't know, but I'd put them on a similar level, and as I think that's what we kind of need. As much as we've talked about, and I've said, the opportunity for a young guy to step forward, or multiple young guys step forward, is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I just don't think they have. So
yeah, okay.
Bring in Dontrelle Inman.
Dontrelle Inman?
I'm not drunk. You're drunk. It's my birthday. Leave me alone.
How's that suit? Is it still smoking?
But I mean, bring him in, and then you only have to worry about one or two open positions for those instead of two or three, and I'd prefer that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on. This is an interesting title because it seems like Captain Obvious rolled in. But did you know that Martha Ford wants a Lombardi trophy?
What?
Yeah. Get it together, buddy. It's okay.
Help me up, man. Sorry.
I know, right? Yeah. She says her best memory hasn't come yet, and she wants to get the Lombardi trophy. I never thought of that. I never thought that was the case. I am now completely confused. Actually, it's part of. She was interviewed as part of a upcoming special on ESPN. It's going to be on September 1st, called A Lifetime of Sundays. They're going to interview. It's a 90-minute film by NFL Films. It's going to be on ESPN. They profile 4 iconic female NFL owners, and of course, the beautiful Martha Ford is one of the ones that gets profiled there. And she talks about it. Says, "Look, this is something that hasn't happened yet, but this is going to be my best line, my best memory." And I'm with you. I'm with you, Martha. When the Lions do it, it's going to be my best damn memory too. And a lot of people say, man, I don't know. I don't even know how I'll react. If
birth of a child, a marriage.
Hey, look, I like my kid. But
file those under also rans.
No, this is, I mean, I can't even, in my head, I can't even picture. I remember when it was like 43 years, the Red Wings finally won a cup, and I was super into the Wings. And it finally happened. And those last couple of years before they did were just heartbreaking losses and frustrating and angering. And when it happened, I just melted in this ball of satisfaction. I just sat there and watched it all unfolding, and I was like, "Holy shit, it happened! Oh my god!" And I actually wound up grabbing a cigar and sitting outside. And I remember people were running in the streets. We were living in an apartment at the time. People were outside screaming, going crazy. They had swept the Flyers, I believe it was, that they played when they did it. Had swept them. I saw a kid out in the middle of the intersection swinging a broom, right, celebrating it. Seriously, the town was lit after that win. It was amazing, and I can only imagine how exponentially much bigger it would be for the Lions. And I just think, for her, right? I worry about that massive satisfaction that comes right when that happens. Holy cow, that excitement! Holy cow, man! I just can't even. So anyway, it looks like it's going to be a pretty good thing. Again, September 1st. Starts on Sunday, August 1st. I'm sorry, on ESPN, and it's Sunday. Let me start over. Sunday, August 25th on ESPN, and then on September 1st on ABC. So it's going to be on the one of the big 4 networks there where you can see it. Really looks like a good show.
I got to interject real quick with some. It's not exactly breaking news. It looks like a few hours old, but the Cowboys did a hilarious thing today and tweeted out that they were going to be offering a contract extension to one of their players today. And then that player happened to be Jalen Smith, their linebacker. So not like one of the 3 guys.
God. So they're this
huge troll.
Yeah, that's boy. Boy. Okay, and with that, we'll move on. Mike Daniels, a guy you may have heard of, and Marvin Jones. I think you know Marvin. You've seen him once or twice on the field. Both cleared to practice now. Marvin, remember, stayed home in the Texans game. Didn't even come to Houston with the team. And now this seems relatively quickly been cleared to practice. So that's good news. I want to see Mike Daniels getting some reps out there. I want to see him messing some people up. That's something I'm really excited for. That was a signing that was big, and it's just got to happen, right, Case? He's got to get some arms around some people and send them flying.
Yep. Yes, he does.
Marvin Jones. Any predictions on him this year? I want to see.
I'm super high. I am super high on Marvin Jones. I was gonna just leaving you hanging there for a minute.
Ago, you predicted his meteoric rise and how well he would do with the organization. Yeah. It was like, wow, okay. And then you were a little cooler on him last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'm trying to get, what's the temperature here?
No, I'm actually really high. I'm very high on him. I mean, it obviously all depends on whether or not he stays healthy, but if he stays healthy for the whole year, I still think there's a very good chance he outproduces Kenny Galladay. And outside of touchdowns, I think Kenny Galladay gets the touchdowns. But
I'm interested, and this is something, again, this is the 3rds and 4ths, and we haven't opened the playbook and all that, but there was some good separation by those guys on the field.
Separation. That's like the word of the day.
Yeah. In this game against the Texans,
I need some nipple tassels every time we say word of the day. I'll let that sink in.
I'm trying to put
separation.
Build a wall. Oh my God! Oh, that's a YouTube moment for everybody. Okay. Oh, for God's sakes, you kill me sometimes. just destroyed. All right, so hopefully this Bevel offense can schematically build some separation in. We'll see. I'll just stop and move on. The guys with those nipple tassels, though, they are absolute fanatics. And if you want to get your Lions gear, maybe even Lions nipple tassels, you should go to fanatics.detroitlions.podcast.com.
God, did they make those?
Oh, time to look.
I hope they do.
You are disinvited from camp next year. Fanatics.detroitlions.podcast.com. Head on in. Yeah, you go back to the Blue Oyster and get your work. You'll make a bunch. Fanatics.detroitlions.podcast.com. Check it out. All your Lions gear, your needs. They got the Lions kicks. I saw a couple people were checking those out and picking some up. Sweet deal from Nike this year. Real cool shoes. And, I was going to get I noticed nobody got me any for my birthday, so don't expect anything, Case. Our listeners don't love us the way they should. But
I just can't think, like, how else do you expect me to pay for the trip again?
Okay. I'll send you the tassels. We'll put that on prime shipping. All right, yeah. Fanatics.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Your shirts, your hats. It's not just Lions stuff. It's your Michigan, your college teams, your pro football, hockey, baseball. You name it. Why not celebrate the Tigers and their 0-47 record this year? What a great way to go. Fanatics.DetroitLionsPodcast.com. You can get all the top quality licensed gear. Show off your team spirit. Support your boys in whatever color they're wearing. We're talking about the boys in blue. And get a little kickback to the podcast along the way. It never costs you more. It's a great deal. So if you haven't checked out those sneakers, though, check out there's their Nike Pegasus Lions branded shoes. They are awesome looking shoes. Really, really nice. All right, let's get into this other thing. This guy, Brian Baldinger. And he's a guy I know you have respect for. I'm kind of hot and cold with him and some of his takes. But he had what is the equivalent of a drunken uncle rant here, Case. And if anybody knows a drunken uncle rant,
can't handle his finger.
If anybody knows has one of these things
crazy
laid out, it's you, Mr. Drunken Uncle himself. Case.
Yeah. And actually, no, I really actually do have a fair amount of respect for Brian Baldinger. This particular rant, and it's not like I can't respect guys who go after the Lions as long as they do it intelligently. This just didn't make any sense. I didn't understand why he was so upset at the Lions for this when so many other teams have been doing the same thing.
No, but they haven't. They weren't working on anything.
I just don't get it. Like, I understand that this is not how the preseason used to look like. But things change and evolve, and
he hasn't.
That he got so upset about the Lions not playing Stafford in a meaningless game when Stafford is a 31-year-old, 10-year vet quarterback. I don't. I was left scratching my head, and I will hopefully come back to future good feelings towards Brian Baldinger, because I really have liked a lot of the things he said, and I like the way that he goes into detail sometimes about specific plays and specific players. This felt nonsensical, emotional. I didn't understand.
Like somebody touched him inappropriately as a child, and he just saw him on TV. That was his reaction to me, and it was probably because he had to deliver something. And watching the game like that, it's like, what do you deliver? Oh, I can be angry, and I'll get my clicks and
yeah, maybe.
People
I'm not really sure what was going on, but certainly
let's be real. It's all about please talk about me. That's why they do those things. So anyway, yeah, that was really weird to see. Again, I'm not a huge fan of Baldinger. He's hot and cold, whatever. But sometimes hang a little lower than the others. I don't know. he's just not one of my faves. He's not one I hate either. But it just wasn't really. It was a weird juxtaposition what he was arguing in his little video. So if you see it show up on your screen, just move past and don't worry about it. And we'll go on from there. Quick show update. We were going to try to do a live post-game show from the third preseason game. Unfortunately, the way my travel schedule is we're not probably going to be able to do that. But we are putting together a show before I go, and I'm going to edit it on the plane and probably upload it from 35,000 feet over the Atlantic, and we'll see how that goes. So we'll have a show up for you.
Going over the Atlantic, though?
Yeah, it's funny. I did the globe math, and like New Orleans is directly across the earth where I'm at. So if I was back in LA,
I just think of U.S. flights going to India as going west, but
it would be well, and for you it would because you're closer that way.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. Makes sense. Just
Amsterdam,
surprising.
and then Mumbai. So
I'll work out my geography. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's an easy mistake because the halfway point, like I said, is right around New Orleans. So if you're to the west of that, you'll take the western route. If you're to the right of that, you'll take east of that, you'll take the eastern route. So
interesting.
There you go. Yeah. So we're doing that, and I'll edit it and upload it from there. And we'll get it up there. So we'll have something up for you on the 25th, 26th of next week. We'll have a review of the game. We'll do another podcast. We'll talk through everything. And then we won't have the midweek podcast on Tuesday night like we usually do because I will be bouncing around like crazy overseas. I get back the 31st. I will check out the game on, I think it's the 30th or 20th. It's actually the 30th in India, but the 29th here. I've done the math on that, so I got you covered. I'll catch that game. I may do a quick YouTube reaction video and put that on our screen, and then we'll probably go on the 3rd of September with our next one. So you'll see us this week, next week around Monday or Sunday or Monday, and then the week after we'll be back to on the Tuesday schedule. So you're not missing out. We're just having to change a little dates around this to make it all work, but we got you covered. We got cuts and a lot of other stuff. Oh yeah, and your power wankings are coming, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. I literally finished them in the like half hour before we started recording the show. Tomorrow night I will go and finish the editing on them, do a couple more scans and tweaks and things like that, and then and then give them to Mike.
Poor Mike. Poor Mike.
Love you, Mike, if you're listening.
Poor guy. All right, so that's that. That's some show notes. Got our Baldy drunk uncle net. I think that's it. I think that's got us covered. Unless you want to get pickup tickets. Tix, T-I-X, at DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Same story as the rest of that stuff. Tix at DetroitLionsPodcast.com. All right, so that's it. Remember, the show needs your involvement. Use the comments in the subreddit to give us your feedback. That's the best place. We love your feedback. This is a community show. And what better way to be part of the community than talk about the show and let us know what you like and what you don't. Also, you got the other places where you can give us those ratings, iTunes, Google Play, all that. Those 5-star ratings are much, much appreciated there because those are forever. Don't forget about us on Patreon, patreon.com/Detroit Lions Podcast, patreon.com/Detroit Lions Podcast. Sign up, get the Slack, as little as $1 a month donation. You can give more. Don't be afraid to give more, but $1 a month gets you access to all the good stuff. So good stuff there. Also, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/The Detroit Lions Podcast, facebook.com/The Detroit Lions Podcast, and follow us on Twitter at DET Lions Podcast. DET Lions Podcast. It's the very best place to see Case
with no pants on.
It really is the best way to see Case. Give us a call via Skype at Detroit Lions Podcast. All one word, Detroit Lions Podcast, or on the Lions line, 929-33-LIONS. 929-33-LIONS. Great time after this game, game 3 and game 4, to give us your feedback. Get on the show. Just leave a message and we'll get you on there and let us know. You can call us drunk after the game. We're good with that. That's usually when we do most of our stuff. Mm-hmm. Go to DetroitLionsPodcast.com. Subscribe to the podcast. That way we can come inside your little MP3 player and whisper in your ears with our magical thoughts. Thank you for tuning in. We're going to see you next time on the Detroit Lions Podcast. Remember, no pants, no toasters, no hot tubs, no problems, baby, because we're your Detroit Lions and Reddit connection.